Rio+20 conference as a correspondent for the Guardian newspaper, and as such, I suppose my role is twofold. First, to really find out what's going on, what are the hold-ups, what are the hopes, and what kind of ideas are bubbling under the surface in the side events and the more dynamic parts of the conference. But also to communicate that to a wider audience. And both of those things pose challenges, although it's fairly transparent what's going here. It's very complex, incredibly vague and broad, so it's quite easy to lose sight of what the objectives are or should be. And also on the communication side, trying to get people interested in a process where there are so little expectations. This is the second huge conference of its type after after the original Rio meeting in 1992. That came up with a lot of concrete proposals. For example, the International Convention on to deal with climate change, and also a convention to deal with biodiversity, and others. That was a lot of concrete stuff, but it still didn't solve the basic problem, which is the steady degradation of the global environment. So, if that didn't do it, I think there's good reason why people are very sceptical that 20 years on, with the situation even worse and the solutions on the table even vaguer, why should this actually achieve anything? And how do you manage to communicate that without making people lose hope or just think it's all a waste of time or there's nothing we can do? That's the real challenge of communication in Rio+20. Expectations are incredibly low. Firstly, because the current situation globally is very grim. Europe's in the middle of an economic crisis, and so it's very difficult for leaders there to focus on anything else. The US is in the middle of a presidential election, and Barack Obama will know that with his electorate, coming to a place like this, talking about the environment is politically toxic. He won't do it. And then you've got the very long-standing disagreements between the developing world and the developed world about where to put the emphasis on environmental protection, or whether to put the emphasis on poverty alleviation. And getting the balance right between all those things was difficult enough 20 years ago. It's even more difficult now with the problem worse. So expectations are extraordinarily low. But that said, this is it's more amorphous, it's vaguer, but what this kind of conference can achieve is bringing together a lot of thoughts and ideas that have sort of emerged in different places, in different spheres over recent years, that recognize what has happened so far isn't working, and is trying to find something new. So it's a discussion, yes, and discussions are always more frustrating than meetings that come out with concrete decisions. But the discussion is taking place, and people will go from this meeting with new ideas. What is a green economy? What is sustainable development? How should we measure economic growth, and mix that sort of old-fashioned GDP measurement with other indicators of well-being, such as social stability or energy use or carbon intensity. All of those things and a lot more will be debated in more detail here, and people will go away with those ideas and take those back to their countries. But the problem is that will spread ideas, that will spread the seeds of the intellectual seeds, but without some good, solid, concrete action at the top, it won't necessarily create the right environment for those ideas to grow. The elephant in the room in these negotiations is economic growth and population growth, and the population will continue to grow. It's projected from current 7 billion to 9 billion by 2050. Political leaders are unable to think of anything other than economic growth through this period. Until now, that has been predicated on increasing consumption of the world's natural resources. unsustainably, as absolutely everybody recognizes. Now, a sort of a pure hard green conservation environmental approach to the world's current problems would say that, well, this isn't working, and the real solution should be not to focus so much upon growth, at least material growth, and not always to put GDP first. And until now that's been politically toxic, because people only see it in terms of this awful wrenching austerity programs. But there is another side to it that isn't emphasized enough, which is that it's about putting the global economy on a healthier track. And if it's done in conjunction with a degree of redistribution, it doesn't have to lead to massive social unrest. Until now, the global economy has been one where well-being has been based on, if you're a human being, it'll be on consuming more and more and more and getting a bigger and bigger GDP, which is almost like getting fatter and fatter and fatter. And austerity, if it's done right, is like a diet that's actually good for you. And it means that you will get back into a balance with what is a level of growth, a size of yourself that is a whole lot healthier. I mean, and better for your mental well-being. The key is, though, to think that although it's going to become more and more difficult to grow in the way we've grown in the past through increased consumption of materials, in the future, how to find a growth that is not so reliant on fossil fuels, on mineral extraction, on deforestation, and on overuse and unsustainable use of the land, and to move more to growth that's predicated on non-material things, on ideas, on culture, and on well-being rather than size. I think those are the kinds of things that need to be discussed, but still it's very hard for any politician to talk about the necessity of either zero growth or even negative growth. They only do it, as we're seeing in certain countries in Europe, they'll only do it if they're forced to do it. Nobody will do it by choice. I think we're already seeing a dilution of power from national leaders and elected politicians towards, yes, civil society, NGOs, internet communities, but also towards big corporations and think tanks. And that's the new sort of the dividing line now. It's not just like the old left and right anymore. So I think there is a sort of a new, the political battleground, if you like, is being reformed. The battle lines are being reformed on those who want a sustainable and equitable future, and those who are much more in favour of dog eat dog, and the strongest shall emerge at the top. So yes, I mean that's an old debate, but it's taking place in new arenas. Another big shift in power is the shift from the old industrialized economies to the new emerging economies. So from the US and Europe and Japan to the BRICS. And then yes, which of those BRICS has the model or the best model for others to follow? I suppose the first thing to say is that it's becoming increasingly clear that there is no one model, and that one part of this, one aspect of this increasingly fragmented, although interconnected world that we now live in, is a recognition that that different things will work in different places. However, I think the two countries that I'm most interested in are the one I've just come from, which is China, where I've spent the last 9 years as a reporter, and the country I've just moved to, which is Brazil, where I hope to be for several more years. I became very concerned that the way China has been doing things is massively unsustainable. It's not entirely their fault. They become the workshop of the world. They've also become the dump site of the world. And a lot of the world's environmental pressure has been outsourced to China. And as a result, that country has incredible environmental problems that it will take a great deal of time and a great deal of money to fix, if they can ever be fixed. And I think there will be generations that are still dealing with the problems of this rapid growth era, unregulated rapid growth era, that hasn't been done in conjunction with concepts of sort of harmony with nature in any meaningful form. At least not until recently. The government is trying to change there. That is encouraging. But I just think the scale of the problems they face is so large that even with the impressive measures that the government's introduced in the last 5 to 10 years are still not enough. Now, against that, you have Brazil, which is, it's in a different situation. It's got lower population density. It has greater forests and other natural resources. But there also seems to be in Brazil, and this is a tentative thought and one that I want to explore in the years ahead. It's not a conclusion, but there does seem to be a stronger civil society. There does seem to be more participation from grassroots organizations. There is a very strong environmental movement here. There's some incredibly impressive people in the Green Party in Brazil, and they're influential too. So there are all sorts of checks and balances that might be slowing their growth compared to somewhere like China. I mean, they're at different stages, as I said, in different circumstances, but it might also be making that growth more sustainable. It might be a better model, and that is one of the main reasons I'm here, is to explore whether that's really the case. Is there a better way of doing things, or is this the China model, which in a sense was just an extension of the Japan model, which was an extension of the US model, which was an extension of the European and British model? Is it just inevitable that you keep doing that until you just run into a wall? And hopefully the answer is no.